another conversation about this. Uh, Donna, can we get or Simone or whoever can, or John, quick update on the MLK?
Got Simone.
Yep, sorry, trying to unmute. Okay, first, I would just say, I think we kind of did a little introduction, but I'd like to welcome Joseph Lupo to our office as a new Assistant Corporation Counsel. So I'll just start off with that. Then as a second matter, well, as an initial matter, I think it's necessary to clarify the current status of the building with respect to reopening, as there seems to be some misinformation circulating out there. So just to reiterate and just go over again. So in March, the city, ended up closing the building due to the governor's pause order, and the building has remained closed to the public since March. Since it was never reopened, it couldn't have been recently shut down. So this seems to be some confusion as to that question. So the building is currently closed to the public because it has not been reopened yet. As we're aware, there's two types of services that are generally provided in the building. It's recreational and educational. Under the governor's reopening plan, limited recreation was not permitted to reopen until phase 4 plus, as we're calling it, because it was a little bit later than phase 4. And we didn't re-enter phase 4 until we're at that point of phase 4 until mid to late August. In addition, educational uses didn't start and reopen in Long Beach until this week. So I just want to make everybody aware and the public aware of that, because again, that seems to be some confusion. In addition, in order to reopen, you must develop a site safety plan that is specific to the type of activity and use that's going to be going on in the building. So, with this, it needs to be specific to the recreational types of uses, and each use, if it's whatever it is, one has to be authorized by the governor. So if it's football, for example, football's not yet authorized. It might not be till September, October, or we don't know at this point. But all of the uses have to be approved and permitted uses by the governor at this stage of the game. And, the site safety plan needs to provide for each type of use. So it would apply to the recreational uses, every specific type, and also to the educational, whatever educational uses would be conducted, and also accommodate office use. So those are some things right there. I mean, and as we just, I think, kind of all got from Councilman Delory, he just explained a lot of the guidelines just from our building alone and how much goes into all of these things that he noted are part of our site safety plan. So taking your temperature when you come in, signing in, keeping a log for tracing purposes, all those different types of things go into your site safety plan. So this isn't something that can just be done haphazardly. It also can't be generic or general, because we need to make sure we're accounting for each type of activity and keeping everyone safe and complying with the governor's guidelines. But I think safety is our primary objective here. So just wanted to explain that in general, because as I said, there seems to be a lot of misinformation circling around. For every building we have, every use that we have going, the city has developed its own site safety plan specific to that use. So City Hall has its own, our farmers market, the pools, the beach, and the boardwalk, and they've all been developed at different stages as we've reopened. So, with all this in mind, going back a bit, we had reached out to the MLK Center in late July, anticipating that if we were going to go into these types of uses, it would probably be in late August to the beginning of September. And we wanted to discuss, the next steps for reopening, because we knew we were going to have all these requirements, and also a new lease for the space, as we have received inquiries from the Nassau County Family Services Division, basically for a new lease to ensure that the MLK Center continues to meet its requirements for its grant funding, and we are able to help them be in compliance. So as I said, we reached out to them. Their board wasn't available to begin discussions until mid-August, and city officials and the entire board did begin, discussions at that point. The MLK board also committed to working on a programming schedule for discussion. So as I was saying, a programming schedule would include the types of activities so that we could better determine what kind of site safety plan, we would need, and help them with developing a site safety plan. So, both parties agreed to continue discussions and scheduled the subsequent meetings for late August However, then the board did choose to request an adjournment of our most recent meeting to seek legal assistance in moving through this process, because it can be a little bit complicated. Late last Friday afternoon, we did receive a draft programming schedule and a generic site safety plan from the executive director. And we're currently reviewing the materials and assessing the next steps, as some of the programs proposed are not scheduled, or it seems like are not scheduled to be considered for reopening until later this month or early October. And in addition to that, the state safety plan is not specific to the types of use. So it's kind of a generic plan. So additional discussions are going to be necessary in order to work out those details and those kinks. And additionally, we're working on drafting a new lease agreement for future use of the facility to ensure that everyone is in compliance with certain requirements and guidelines, and that we're all being good stewards to the communities that we serve, and making sure everybody's meeting their obligations and doing what they're supposed to do. So that's an update. Does anyone have any questions?
So my understanding is the lease has the current tenant. There's one tenant right now, right? So, and
Yes.
that tenant is, for lack of a better term, I guess, on a holdover for the old lease. It expired, but a new lease was never done. So they just kind of operating under the old lease. So,
Sort of, yes, but at this point, pretty much for certain funding requirements, and I guess newer funding requirements with Nassau County, there must be a current lease. So at this point, it really is, it's necessary, one, from our standpoint, as we are evaluating all of our facilities and all of our buildings, and we are making sure that they are all in compliance, that we have updated leases, that the leases have been audited to ensure that they have the most favorable terms for the city. And also, this is part of just the general audit and overall audit that Ina is going through in my office, and working, with some of the state comptroller's recommendations. So yes, so for multiple purposes, one, also that we need to come into compliance, and we also need to be doing what we should be doing and being accountable, as this council has committed to doing. And also to help, Nassau County requires a current lease. So this also helps that not-for-profit as well.
so when did the lease expire?
The lease expired quite some time ago. We're talking over a decade.
It's been more than 10 years they've been without a lease?
It's been, yes, many more than 10 years.
Been 25 years, John.
Approximately, yeah, 25 years or 25 years.
And how much are they paying in rent?
Currently, they have not been paying rent, which Ina and I discovered as we were doing our review.
So they got no lease and they haven't been paying rent.
Precisely.
How do you get grant money then?
But we're all working on making sure that everything gets fixed as soon as possible.
Yes, and to your point, Councilman Delory, you do need to have a current lease in order to continue to receive your grant funding. So this is something that is a priority, and should be a priority for them as well, because they, it's a Nassau County requirement. I know over the years, things have changed, obviously, things develop, but currently that is one of the requirements for their grant funding contract. Or at least that's what the county has advised us.
This is an across the board process, as Simone has explained. Donna and Simone and the entire staff have found, inconsistencies in terms of procedures and policies that the city is not following. And this administration is cleaning them up. So there are going to be issues like this, Mike, where, yeah, there's inconsistencies between the policies and the applications that are going on right now. and we're fixing them all. This is what the staff is working on, fixing a lot of things. And this
So-
is one.
Yes.
Simone, do you happen to know when the last time they did pay rent was?
I don't recall whether Ina had looked into it or not. I think, I mean, Ina might be able to answer. I don't believe they paid rent for a significant amount of time. It has to be at least 10 years. I'm not sure if Ina was able to do an accounting specifically. It hasn't been any time recently. But I
So-
guess we could say that.
So you were saying
Yeah,
that to get their grant money and such, they have to submit financial information to the, I guess, the state, you would said. I'm assuming they would have to file similar information with the city since they're a tenant in our building running programs. Do they submit financial information to the city?
Yes, you are correct. They, under the old lease and then anything going forward, they are required to file their annual returns, which is a 990 because they are not for profit, and also their CHAR 500s, which their CHAR is their annual filing with New York State Charities Division, I believe it is. So yes and no, we have not, I'm not sure whether or not they have gotten an extension for this year. The most recent that we do, or at least we were able to obtain through, the state websites, because they do have them available. We weren't provided with them from the not-for-profit. So that's the start. We were able to, pull them from, they're published on state websites after a certain period of time. So we were able to pull the 2018. I know that Ina has some questions about it, and we also had asked that their treasurer, please reach out to Ina, and so that Ina could talk about some of the questions and comments and concerns that she has. So, and we're awaiting that, basically, their treasurer to respond.
So that's pretty much the status right now. We're waiting to hear back, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I think I cut Ina off. She was going to say something.
You didn't cut me off. No, I just wanted to say that Simone is absolutely right. I don't think that there has been any collections on the rent in the last 10 years.
Okay.
Yes,
All
I mean,
right.
and we have an obligation just as the city, to be good stewards, as I said, and to make sure a couple of things, that they're properly funded to be in our building for a purpose and for services. As I said too, I mean, we have to make sure that they're abiding by all of the guidelines and restrictions for reopening. And further discussions are definitely required for that, and we're awaiting a lot of information.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like now you're having dialogues with their board. So I guess we got to get this straightened out. Mike?
Just a general question, Simone, if you know this, and if not, the utilities that are like water, electric, lighting, would they be in the city's name because we own the building?
I believe they are. Ina might know better. I think they are in our name, because I don't believe there's separate meters in the building.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if
Okay.
Ina knows the actual answer to that
I was gonna
question.
say, Ina should know that answer, and I believe they are in the same name.
Okay. And any type of usual improvements to building, whether it's a roof or whatever type of structural improvements, or knocking down a wall, or improving the fire alarm system or anything like that, that would usually need us as the owner to do. And if we have to expend money, can we bill the tenant?
Under the provision, under the old lease, yes, we do have the right to do that. For starters, they're supposed to, if it's a non-structural issue, they are actually supposed to do all the repairs themselves, and the obligation is on them. If it's a
Okay.
structural repair, then it would be our cost. So for example, I believe Tommy at one point we looked at the facility to just figure out what was there, because I guess there's been some work that's been done that we didn't necessarily do over the years. So I know Tommy had talked about some work that was done by us under FEMA after Sandy, but that was to the roof, it was structural, so we were on the hook for that. But it's my understanding that we're still paying for most everything in the building, even though it technically is their responsibility.
Okay, thank you.
I
You're
just
welcome.
want to bring up that, even though I'm a paper pusher, this is giving me a headache. Liz, the bigger issue here is that we have services that used to be provided, but that are not necessarily being provided right now. And I'm really concerned about that. Have you been talking with your fellow nonprofit friends in the community to see how we can serve or help with services?
Well, yes, but I am optimistic that things will be moving forward and getting back to normal.
And Donna, you've been in touch with members of the community, right? Like
Yes,
Pastor-
actually what we're doing is we're looking at all of the buildings that the city owns that can be rented out or services can be provided. We're going to come up with an application. And so and Simone can explain this too. So if you want to use the MLK Center for holding a STEAM program, you can come to the city and say, I want to hold STEAM program at MLK. But if you want to hold the same program on a different date somewhere else in one of the other city buildings, you will have that right. And so we're trying to make sure that the services that are provided for Long Beach as a whole. And so because it is a city building, and we're trying to keep our own city out of hot water of saying that this building is only allocated for this and nothing else can be in that. Because it's all taxpayers that pay for that building. And we're trying to do everything across the board. And there have been, and McNally can speak about it, they had a meeting yesterday to talk about how to do the services across the board in all the buildings that we have. And I know that that's something that everybody's been trying to work on it. You want to touch base about your meeting yesterday, Mr. McNally?
Sure. I mean, we brought together and we're looking to continue to expand a number of our faith-based and community/civic leaders to really begin a discussion about how do we begin to assess the needs of the individual communities and the community writ large across Long Beach, and then from there, how do we speak with the community and engage the community on what are the resources and the programs that, and part of the discussion was not so much what they want, but what our community really needs to make sure that our youth are having enrichment, life building, skills building experiences, that our seniors are getting the kind of the engagement and mobility and the brain exercise for lack of better terms work, and that these programs are meeting the needs of, yes, the specific communities, because there is no denying that the West End is most likely to be utilized mostly by West Enders, and North Park is most likely to be the community that utilizes MLK, but also with a recognition that these are citywide facilities, and so that we also diversify some of the opportunities that take place in each of the communities, so that we are bringing the very diverse nature of our city together to be sharing use of some of these spaces in whatever ways that we can and the opportunities that we can create there. So that was the beginning of an opportunity. We'll be having, a follow-up discussion about how we conduct needs assessments. We're going to be working on, what surveys might look like for the communities and, the different ways that it can be dispersed, because obviously just putting up a poll on the city's website is not doing a whole lot to bridge any sort of digital divide, and you're not going to get, from as much input from low mod communities or from an elderly population. And these are communities that we really, want to be gaining their input on. So You know, there's going to be some boots on the ground, door knocking at each of these centers. They might become polling stations where I drop a survey off here. So, you know, I think we came up with some pretty good, you know, intuitive or, you know, interesting ideas of how to move this stuff forward and how to try and get public input in ways that the city hasn't historically done that. And we'll keep moving forward until, you know, we're able to do so.
So I'm hearing that.
I'm sorry, Karen. I just wanted to say what's important for everybody to know is that we're not talking about removing the current tenant from the building. That's why we're talking to the board. We're trying to get the lease. So I don't want anyone to think that as we move forward, we're saying we're kicking the current tenant out. That is not what we're doing at all. We're trying to be a partnership and see what else we can do in that particular building and have the tenant there. And that's why we're trying to work through the lease.
And that was very much part of the conversation of the meeting last night too. So thanks for bringing that up, Donna. It was, you know, there are the three separate community centers that we have, and it's West End, it's Magnolia, and it's Martin Luther King Center. They are utilized to varying degrees. You know, the West End Community Center is basically for some civic meetings, our sandbox program, and that's essentially it. The senior center has been used almost exclusively for senior, plus our historical daycare program. The Martin Luther King Center is Martin Luther Junior King Center. It is more robustly utilized by the nonprofit there, so it would be looking to supplement the work that they're doing insofar as you know, what they're doing and making sure that it's complementary and not duplicative as well.
You know,